This is Chapter 3, Digestion, Absorption, and Metabolism for Nutrition 230. Digestion and absorption. Biochemically, you are what you eat is true. Food and fluid is taken into the body and then is broken down into smaller components so it can be used by the body. We have carbohydrates that are used for energy, protein that's used for structure and energy and regulation, fat that's used for structure, energy, and regulation, vitamins and minerals that are used for regulation and structure, and water that's also used for structure and regulation. When we look at the hierarchy of life, the smallest unit of matter is an atom. Atoms, linked by chemical bonds, form molecules. Minerals can be as small as atoms, whereas every other nutrient can be as small as a molecule. Molecules form the structures that make up cells. Each cell is bounded by a membrane. In multicellular organisms, cells are usually specialized to perform specific functions. The cell is the smallest unit of life. Groups of similar cells form tissues, such as the muscle tissue that you can see here, and then organs, such as the stomach, are discrete structures that perform specific functions in the body. Organs work together to perform specific functions, and these are considered organ systems. And then us, as an organism, a living organism, we are made up of a variety of different organ systems. Now, in nutrition, you've taken biology, you've taken some anatomy and physiology, you've taken some chemistry. Nutrition is really about how what we eat is transferred into how every organ system in our body functions to make a healthy organism. And our role as dietitians or nutrition professionals is really to make sure that us as an organism can live the highest quality of life possible. So if we look at the different organ systems of the body, we have our nervous system, we have our respiratory system, our urinary system, our reproductive system, cardiovascular or circulatory system, lymphatic or immune system, muscular system, skeletal system, endocrine system, integumentary system, and digestive system. Now, when we look at what each of these organ systems do, we can see that each of these is going to perform a specific function in the body. So the nervous system allows us to respond to stimuli from the external and internal environment and conducts impulses to activate muscles and glands and integrates the activities of the other systems. When we talk about electrolytes, the electrolytes are going to produce these nerve impulses and muscle contractions in order to allow this to happen, and electrolytes are minerals. Our respiratory system is going to supply blood with oxygen, and in order to transport that oxygen around, we need iron in order to move that along, and we need our red blood cells, which are made of proteins. Our urinary system helps to eliminate waste and regulate the balance of water. When we talk about water intake, electrolyte intake, and sodium, water, potassium balance, we'll really be talking about the urinary system and all the hormones that are integrated in there, which of course the hormones are from our endocrine system. Our reproductive system is really important in terms of nutrition because most of our reproductive hormones are going to be made up of fat type molecules. So we need enough essential fatty acids in order to make those hormones. Our cardiovascular system is going to transport blood, which carries oxygen and nutrients and waste. So this is going to transport all of those nutrients around our body and then also be the little catalyst, that oxygen, for every reaction in each of our cells to produce ATP, or our powerhouse of energy. The lymph is going to help us defend against foreign invaders. Over half of our lymphatic system is in our digestive system. So we have a lot of immune proteins in our digestive system that are our first line of defense. So those interact with each other. And then also all fat type molecules are going to transport throughout the lymph as well. Our muscles are made of proteins. These are our major spots where ATP is produced, and they're going to provide movement and structure. Our skeletal system is made of bones and joints, and we need to make sure we're taking in enough mineral in order to support our skeletal system, such as calcium and magnesium and phosphorus. Our endocrine system secretes hormones that regulate a variety of body processes and actually regulate our hunger and our fullness signals and how much fat gets stored and whether or not we can reproduce. Vitamin D is actually a hormone that's also a nutrient as well. The integumentary system includes our skin, hair, nails, and sweat glands. They cover and protect the body and help control body temperature. And then our digestive system, of course, is what we're going to be mostly focusing on in this chapter, which is going to be how nutrients are digested or broken down and absorbed or taken into our body. So as I mentioned, digestion is breaking food down into components that are small enough to be absorbed by the body, and absorption means taking those substances into the interior of the body. The GI tract is a hollow tube that's consisting of the mouth, the pharynx, the esophagus, the stomach, the small intestine, the large intestine, and the anus. Transit time is the amount of time it takes food to pass through the length of the GI tract. Transit time can slow down if we have a lot of fiber in our diet, which keeps us fuller for longer. And transit time is pretty quick if we're eating something that's super fast absorbing, like pure sugar. Feces makes up our body waste, and that includes unabsorbed food residue, bacteria, and dead cells. So you can think of anything that's eliminated in the feces actually has never entered our body before. If we look at the overview of the digestive system contains two major classes of organs. We have the GI tract, where food is actually passing through, and then we have the accessory organs that secrete things into the digestive tract in order to assist with digestion. As I mentioned before, the mouth, pharynx, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, and anus are the components of our GI tract. And accessory organs include the salivary glands, which produce saliva that contain enzymes to digest, the liver, which makes bile that aids in the digestion and absorption of fat, the pancreas that releases bicarbonate, which is sort of an internal Tums pill to neutralize the intestinal contents, and also produces some enzymes that digest carbs, protein, and fat. And then the gallbladder, which stores bile and releases it into the small intestines when it's needed. When we look at the structure of the gut wall, there are a variety of layers. We have an external layer of connective tissue, some layers of smooth muscle, an internal layer of connective tissue, and then the mucosa. The mucosa of the gut wall, in our small intestines especially, contain little finger-like projections called villi, which then contain hairs on them called microvilli. And when we look at the mucosa of the intestines, this really increases the absorptive surface that's available to about the size of 2 tennis courts. Digestive secretions. The digestion inside the GI tract is assisted by digestive secretions. Mucus is the viscous material produced by goblet cells, and mucus's job is to moisten, lubricate, and protect the GI tract. Enzymes are proteins that speed up chemical reactions, and they're not changed during these reactions. When we look at a variety of enzymes that we can find in the digestive system, we can find enzymes that digest carbohydrate and protein and fat. As you can see here, salivary amylase comes from the salivary glands. It works in the mouth, and it breaks starch down into shorter chains of glucose. If you try putting a piece of white bread or a white cracker in your mouth, you'll actually start to taste sweetness in 30 seconds or so. And this is the action of salivary amylase breaking starch into shorter chains of simple sugars. Renin is found in the stomach. It causes the milk protein casein to curdle. We actually add renin enzymes externally to milk to make cheese. Pepsin breaks proteins into polypeptides and amino acids in the stomach. Trypsin comes from the pancreas and is secreted into the small intestines to break proteins and polypeptides into shorter polypeptides. And when we look at chymotrypsin and carboxypeptidase, they perform similar roles in breaking down proteins. Lipase is going to break down triglycerides into monoglycerides, fatty acids, and glycerol. Pancreatic amylase is going to further the salivary amylase's job by breaking starch into shorter glucose chains, as well as maltose, which is the disaccharide that's two glucoses. In the small intestine, there are also some other secretions. So you have the pancreas secreting things into the small intestine, and then some other secretions coming directly from the small intestinal mucosa. Carboxypeptidase, aminopeptidase, and dipeptidase are going to break polypeptides and dipeptides into amino acids. Amino acids are the smallest building blocks of protein that can then be absorbed. Sucrase, lactase, maltase, and dextrinase are going to break sucrose, lactose, and maltose, as well as short chains of glucose, into individual monosaccharides, fructose, galactose, and glucose. These are the smallest units of carbohydrate that can then be absorbed into the small intestinal mucosal cells. We'll go through each of these enzymes in much more detail in chapters 4, 5, and 6, but just as an introduction, these are some of the many digestive enzymes that are needed to break down our macronutrients. We also have a variety of hormones in our digestive system. In our stomach, we have gastrin. It stimulates the secretion of HCl and pepsinogen by gastric glands in the stomach, increasing motility and emptying. This is what causes our stomach to growl. We also have somatostatin that comes from the stomach and the duodenal mucosa. The duodenum is the top part of our small intestines. It inhibits stomach secretion, motility, and emptying, as well as pancreatic secretion, absorption into the small intestines, gallbladder contraction, and bile release. Secretin is also in the duodenal mucosa, so the top of the small intestines. It inhibits gastric secretion and motility, increases the output of water and bicarbonate from the pancreas, and increases bile output from the liver. Cholecystokinin, or CCK, stimulates the contraction of the gallbladder to expel bile and increases the output of enzyme-rich pancreatic juice. Gastric inhibitory peptide inhibits gastric secretion and motility. So as you can see, these hormones play reverse roles, sort of, some causing decrease in secretions and some causing increase in secretions. And these, whether or not these are present in the GI tract, really depends on whether or not there's food present in the GI tract. When we look at the variety of different phases of digestion, we start with the cephalic phase, which happens even before anything hits our mouth. So the mouth is the entry point for food into the digestive tract, but sense of smell and sight in the cephalic phase can actually make our digestive system start working. So if you've ever had an instance where you've had your stomach growl or your mouth water, before you eat anything, that is due to that cephalic phase, or the sensations that happen before we eat. Once our food does hit the mouth, that's the entry point for the food into the digestive tract. This is where saliva starts producing salivary amylase, which, as I mentioned, helps to break down carbohydrates, and lysozymes are also contained in the saliva, and they help to inhibit bacterial growth in the mouth. There's also some mechanical digestion in terms of chewing, breaking down food, and increasing the surface area in contact with digestive enzymes. So you have mechanical digestion, which is the chewing and dissolving, and then you have the chemical digestion, which includes that salivary amylase. We'll pick up with the rest of this lecture in the second half of chapter 3 by talking a little bit about what happens in the esophagus, the stomach, the small intestine, the large intestine, and then what happens after the absorptive phase.